Is Pep Guardiola the greatest of all time? Simple as that. Is he the greatest of all time?
Maybe for people who are younger, they might consider that him as the greatest. I mean, I would always say Alex Ferguson. Um, and just for the things like, I mean, the thing that, because this is a kind of a new, it's almost like the new Ronaldo Messi debate almost, who's better, this or that. But because I mean, look, Ferguson won 13 Premier League titles. He won, the Champions League twice. All this, anyway, all the accolades. But the thing the thing that's always kind of brought up, and I would agree with it, is that he rebuilt teams. Whereas the argument against Pep Guardiola could be that he tended to be at teams where it was almost as if they were ready-made for him to kind of come into, and he didn't have to do too much. I don't necessarily agree with that, especially at City, because he has more or less rebuilt at City more than once. But I would still say Ferguson, but I can maybe understand for a younger generation, people who are younger, they would consider Guardiola, possibly just kind of, because he's almost recency bias, because he's winning everything at the moment,
I don't actually think it's a fair comparison, really, Ferguson and Guardiola, because that's like saying
I'm not saying it's a
no, but it's like saying who was better, Pele or Messi.
Yeah,
different eras.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, I agree. I'm not necessarily comparing the two.
No,
but,
I know. But
yeah,
those are the two
I'm basically
names
saying
that would come up. Those are the two.
I think of the modern era, Pep Guardiola is the best.
100%. He's the best manager there's been for 25 years, 100%. But what I mean by that, before we get that, but what I mean is, like Fergie's greatest achievement was the treble in '99. Yeah, Guardiola was still in the prime of his footballing career. He wasn't even a manager. So it's so hard to compare Guardiola to the greats of the past.
Yeah,
because you could go further. You could go Matt Busby. You could go the Liverpool
Paisley.
legend Paisley and Brian Clough and all of that, right? But football was different then. Do I think Alex Ferguson could do with City what Guardiola's doing with City and has done with City over the last 5 years? No, I'll be honest, no, because it's a different tactical game than it was then. But do I think Guardiola could have done with United what Fergie did over that 15 years? No. Absolutely not. It's so hard to compare, which is what I'm saying. I don't think this is a conversation where you can go, this one person's the best there's ever been.
Having said that, though, so is it 6 Premier League titles that Guardiola's won?
Yeah.
And he won what, 3 at Bayern, was it? And then however many at Barcelona?
I think he won 4 at Barcelona.
I think he's won 12 league titles overall. And Fergie won 13 and obviously won with Aberdeen. But yeah, difficult to say. Do you reckon if Guardiola stayed with City for another 7-8 seasons, do you not reckon he could win another 4 or 5 league titles? And
I actually think it's time.
Perfectly possible.
I mean, this is a different conversation, but I actually think it's time for him to be taking on a new challenge, to be honest. But in terms of his career and going somewhere else, new era and stuff. But I mean, that's a different conversation.
Do you reckon he's getting a bit knackered now with City? He's kind of done everything.
He's done it. He's done it. He's completed it. If this was a football manager save, he'd have exited and pressed new game by now.
Yeah, you know no need to do no need to kind of do an Arsene Wenger and just kind of overstay your welcome by 10 years or something. Just like, win absolutely nothing. But yeah,
I do think that the one thing I would say for Guardiola, I don't think he's the greatest of all time. I do agree in some ways with what Carl is saying. You can't compare Sir Alex Ferguson with Pep, but there is another manager who has managed in both eras, who no one speaks. Oh, yes. For me, he is not just good; he is up there with them names because he's done it at AC Milan. He's done it. He was a success at Chelsea. He done it at Napoli. He managed done a good job at Napoli, but obviously the biggest one out of all of them is probably Real Madrid, and obviously done a good job with Parma as well back in the day. The reason I bring him up is because he's done through all the different eras. So he's had the money. But the biggest thing about these managers when it comes to it is getting the best out of those players. Now, Man City have had the money since when did they get all their money? 2008?
2008, was it 2009?
Yeah, like Robinho was the big signing, wasn't he? He was the marquee signing when they started out. And they all these managers come in. Yes, Mancini and Pellegrini won the Premier League, but none of them could get a consistent performances season in, season out from. Guardiola done that, and he done it to such an extent that Man City are now arguably the third biggest club in Premier League history, or even second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you could argue.
It's an interesting argument.
In the Premier League era,
Arsenal might have something to say about that, but yeah.
No, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Man United, Arsenal, Man City,
Chelsea.
Yeah, I would say Chelsea have an argument.
Liverpool,
but Man City have won more Premier League titles. I'm a Chelsea fan.
I get it.
I would say Man City are a bigger club.
Can I just go back to Ancelotti a second?
Yeah, go on.
For me, Ancelotti's not in Guardiola's league. And the reason I say that, Ancelotti's one of the best managers in the world. But the reason I say that is you look at Ancelotti's track record and he's got arguably nearly as many failures as he has successes. What he's done when it's a success is amazing. But you look through it, he failed at Juventus at the late 90s, failed at Juventus, right? Did amazing at Milan, great. Chelsea, you could argue, was as much of a failure as it was a success because he didn't build anything. He didn't leave them better than they were, if that makes sense. He didn't.
But then, if you look at what he did, if you just focus on what he
did, yeah, I agree with that. But I think there are probably 10 different managers who could have gone in and done the same job. He was very good. I'm not disagreeing with that. But Chelsea were in a position that they were a very good team that just needed the right sort of leadership. And yes, that was Ancelotti at the time. 100%.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But then you look at PSG, failure, right? He failed at PSG, including not winning the league in his first year, which is a, do you know what I mean? That's a travesty when you're PSG, right? Went to Real Madrid and did really well to a point, but did really well. That first spell, he's been better in the second spell, I'd argue. But then he went to Bayern. Didn't do well at Bayern, really. Didn't turn Bayern into a superpower like they should have been. Failed there. Napoli, success. Brilliant. Amazing at Napoli. Everton.
Yeah, on and off. Yeah, he's been very on and off.
He did all right, but I wouldn't call it a success. If we're talking about one of the best managers to have ever been, this is what I'm saying. It's up and down with Ancelotti.
Yeah,
and there's also the conversation of the best manager in the world, like the best managers, are not taking that Everton job. Yeah, they're just not.
Yeah, true. I do think though the biggest argument I would have with Guardiola, like what you said there earlier, David, he's always had a blank checkbook to work with. Like Barcelona, he had probably the best academy I think any manager in the world could ask.
Yeah,
he had the best midfield to install into that team, and everything else. And Messi coming along at that time, everything was perfect in the way. He done such a good job. Of course, Bayern were going to take him next. Like, of course they were after what he did. And then once he left Bayern, of course, Man City were going to take him. I wouldn't be at all surprised if when he finishes at Chelsea, when he finishes at Man City, that another superpower takes him on again. I would not be surprised at all. Who that is, I don't know. Probably someone in Italy. But
I think there's a world where he turns Juventus or AC Milan back into.
He's always had a desire to manage the Brazilian team, but obviously Ancelotti's there now, so that won't happen anytime soon. But I think the main thing with Guardiola that you have to consider, I think, Ancelotti doesn't touch Guardiola. I think because it's all about, for me, it's Pep Guardiola basically coined a style of play in football. Like he basically revolutionized how football is played.
Football.
He changed it. Managers copy how he plays football, basically, when he started the whole tiki-taka thing at Barcelona, and then he carried that throughout the other teams that he managed. I think the only other manager you can maybe compare him to might be Johan Cruyff in terms of influence and style.
Yeah, that's the thing in a way. If you are going to compare a Guardiola and a Ferguson or a Busby or whoever else,
it's the influence on the game.
Ferguson didn't influence the game like that. He was an amazing, successful
he just
manager.
won everything.
But if we talk, absolutely. But if we're talking about tactics or we're talking about the game itself,
absolutely.
Guardiola at Barcelona started it. At Bayern, it went quiet a little bit, if I'm honest, and then he came to City and it's exploded. And all of a sudden, there is one way of playing football, and it's the Guardiola way.
Yeah, and everyone knows what you mean when you say that as well. That's how influential he is, you know.
Yeah.
Do
you think though? This is probably the only one of the biggest things everyone will probably say about Guardiola. Was he a success or was he a failure at Bayern?
He didn't win in Europe, so that's where he fell down. But I think he won the league every season. Was he there 3 seasons or 2 seasons? It was 3.
I want to say more. I want to say more actually.
It wasn't that long. I think it was 3.
He was there 3 years.
3, yeah. 3 seasons, he won the league every year. But he did fail in Europe. I think one of those was that was the famous game against Barcelona. So wasn't as good as it could have been, I guess. Yeah, he just cleaned up in the Bundesliga. But in Europe he failed.
I mean, the fact that he won the Champions League with City is like, I think we understate how much of an achievement that is with this City. I mean, yes, City have turned into one of the best teams in the world thanks to Guardiola and thanks to the money. Yeah, thanks to the oil. I get all of that, but like
thanks to the oil.
There hasn't been a rise like Manchester City that I can think of in world football for at least
in terms of
50
where they
to
started
60.
to where they are
now.
Yeah. It's a short period of time. Yeah.
Would you not put PSG in that bracket at all?
PSG haven't been well, maybe. Well, the quality in the league is the one thing.
But then, like
clean up every year.
This team, if I'm right in thinking, PSG didn't actually exist before 1970.
1970 is when they were formed. Yeah, they're the youngest team in Europe, I believe.
They're the youngest team in Europe.
But they were founded because of a merger. That's what I'd say. It wasn't like they were just created; they were merged. But then since the 80s, when they first won trophies, arguably they've been the best team in France since the 80s. Maybe there's been a few years here and there where a Marseille or a Lyon have been around there.
I remember Lyon dominated French football for years when I was younger, and then they just don't do it at all anymore. Because
I think Montpellier won the league as well one year. I
remember that.
It's interesting we talk about Guardiola and we're talking about PSG, because if you're talking about a potential next destination,
he played for them as well, didn't he?
Did he?
Did. I'm almost certain he did.
I don't think so.
I'm almost certain.
I know he played for Roma.
I'm thinking of Arteta.
Played for Roma. Maybe? Yeah, he actually played in Saudi Arabia as well. In Qatar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Qatar, Saudi Arabia could be a potential last career move. You never know.
I think that he's definitely one of the greatest, despite what everyone says about but he's had the checkbook and all this stuff. I think but like all the other managers did at Man City, why didn't they have
exactly?
That's what annoys me. Is like they didn't do it.
I actually think that argument of he's had money is a complete. It makes no logical sense because to me that actually is an argument for why he's so good, because the money is just gets you the players, right? To get the right players, to fit them into the right system, to develop them the correct way, that is why he's successful. Yes, all right, fair enough. He was very fortunate that he was there for Lionel Messi's best years of his career at Barcelona. Sure. But you could also argue Lionel Messi grew into the player he was because he was working under Pep Guardiola.
I think that's what happened. Yeah, it was definitely the ultimate pairing of coach and manager. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's funny because the same people who talk about the money will go, for example, they'll say, "Oh well, Fergie didn't do that." Well, I think Man United spent a hell of a lot of money compared to everybody else during Fergie's prime time. You think the late 90s where they were the superpower. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a different time, but United were spending more money than everybody else by a long distance.
Yeah.
So it's a moot point. Let's say the money.
It's exactly like the Messi Ronaldo thing. You could go on forever. You could make one point about one, and then you could counterpoint all day.
Yeah.
But he is I agree. You can't deny that he is one of the best. I think of the modern era of maybe the last 10, 15 years. He's definitely the best.
Yeah,
most successful, and most influential.
Yeah.
Let's say.
I think my biggest argument when it comes to this is great managers make fantastic players. And when you go through Guardiola's CV, Busquets has to be one of the biggest players he made because he built that patience within his game that made him probably one of the best holding midfielders ever to play the game.
I mean, the list is long though, not just.
It's long.
Busquets, Iniesta. I'll be honest. Yes, it's shown. Definitely De Bruyne. De Bruyne was a Premier League reject that had done very well for Wolfsburg, which I'll be honest isn't a massive achievement. But then Guardiola turned into the best footballer in the world, basically at one point. You could go on to John Stones. Became one of the best defenders England's ever seen because he worked on the court. Yeah,
Walker. Foden has fallen off a bit, but I mean, there was a period there maybe last year where he looked like a real pet. Yeah. He also, I think that's a good manager as well. Also knows what they can see talent in players and they can kind of coach, but they also know what they don't want as well. Do you remember when he first came into City and he just looked at Joe Hart and he went, "No, you're out."
yeah.
See it.
You are not head and shoulders above.
Yeah.
One last player I would argue, though, he did make is Manuel Neuer. He made him into a proper.
I think Neuer was already one of the best in the world before he even came in.
If I'm right in thinking, correct me if I'm wrong here. Bayern won the Champions League and they won the treble in 2013. Guardiola joined the year after, and then that summer after that was the World Cup where Neuer was the best player.
He won Golden Glove.
If it weren't for Messi, he would have won the Golden Ball as well. He was insane, and probably for a good 4, maybe 5 years, the best keeper in the world.
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's a recurring theme with Guardiola's managerial career and players that players tend to have their best years under Guardiola. And we mentioned Busquets, Iniesta, Messi, Xavi, arguably Lewandowski, Bayern, Manuel Neuer. There are a couple of others at Bayern you could throw. Arjen Robben. Had his best years under Guardiola, and then you go to City and you mentioned De Bruyne, Aguero.
There's so many at Bayern. I'm just trying to think of Bayern now.
Yeah, there's so many that you would say their best years were under Guardiola, and that shows the coaching. That's what that shows. Amen. And you know what you have to say. Guardiola made a lot of these players, but who made Guardiola? Bobby Robson. Bobby Robson as well. I'll throw Bobby Robson in there. But
I forgot Bobby Robson was at Barcelona.
Yeah. But
Oh yes, he wasn't he? Yeah.
But I mean, you could argue Bobby Robson made Guardiola and Mourinho.
Oh, we never mentioned Mourinho. So Mourinho could also be an argument against Guardiola. Not again, but I mean, he could be considered.
He was at one point.
Yeah.
I think up to he got to Real Madrid. I think once he won the league Real Madrid, agreed. As much as that pains me to say,
his career fell off a cliff after that. That's
he made two fantastic signings with us, but I do agree. It was such a nice thing to have him back, but for me, he peaked when he at Inter Milan. His peak was Inter Milan. They should never won that Champions League. Never should they won that Champions League, and they won the treble. Like with Diego Milito as their striker.
Do you not even think? I know what you mean, yeah. But do you remember he came back to Chelsea and he won it was it the second season? He came back 14-15. I mean,
they
he was. He done well. Yeah.
I'm not saying that's when he peaked, but I mean, it's not as if he peaked and then it was just a massive decline after that.
No. But it seemed like every job after that, I think Carl will agree with me here. Every job after that, he had one or two seasons that were good and third season drop.
Yeah, it was always that third season drop off. Yeah.
And then
look, at the end of the day, like if you're going to put him in the same conversation with Guardiola, and I mean this in the nicest way, at the moment he's managing Fenerbahce.
Yeah.
There's not a world where that happens to Guardiola, is there? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The Tottenham failure, United failure.
Keep hold of that comment, Carl. There's not a world where
Guardiola goes to manage Fenerbahce.
Okay.
There's not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there's not.
Right. We are going to revisit this podcast in 10 years' time. Where is he managing?
Winning the treble with Fenerbahce. Yeah.
I'd actually when you look at a
40-year-old Haaland or something. Yeah.
When you look at the stats, Matt's going to hate this. When you look at the stats, I'd actually say Mourinho is quite overrated, to be honest. Amazing at Porto, had a great first spell at Chelsea, peaked at Inter Milan, sure. Then failed at Real Madrid, realistically. Failed at Chelsea.
Did he ever win the league with Real Madrid during that period?
I swear.
Failed at Man United, failed at Tottenham, failed at Roma. Jury's out on Fenerbahce.
He consistently won trophies, though. That's the one thing that kind of keeps him up there.
Yeah, sorry. From after leaving Chelsea, after leaving the league, winning the league title, you can't count anything else. At United, he won the Europa League and a League Cup, and even United didn't celebrate them. Tottenham, he led them to a League Cup final, but did nothing. Went to Roma, he won the Conference League at Roma. Right, which is great. But he didn't qualify. He didn't challenge for a league title where Napoli have come out of nowhere and won the league. What he did in the noughties, incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree.
But once football moved on, as Guardiola style became the thing, Mourinho got left behind.
He didn't adapt with the times, did he? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I do massively agree to an extent. I don't think he belongs in the conversation of greatest of all time because, like you say, he has had the failures. Like I will agree with that. Now, even with the Ancelotti one, I would still put him in the top 10 of all time. Both of those managers.
Oh, he's definitely in the top 10. There's no question he's in top 10.
But I genuinely think that Mourinho was the second best manager in the world between 2000 and 2010.
Agreed.
Hands down. And
agreed.
I'd even maybe go as far as 2012. I'd even go as far as to say. Now, the reason I say it is because he brought a style of football in that teams just could not break down. Chelsea, one of the most famous Chelsea sides of all time, conceded 15 goals in the Premier League season. And he won, like we said, we won the treble with Inter Milan. He won 2 league titles in a row with Chelsea as well. He done things with teams that, yes, okay, Chelsea did have the money, but you still have to pull it off. And he pulled it off in such a way that was just ridiculous.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you look at it. We're looking at it with hindsight to what his career is now. Do you know what I mean? And I get all of that. But Mourinho, on his day, at his best, one of the best managers ever. Agreed.
Yeah.
But to flip that, when it's a failure, it's a horrific failure. There's no in between with Mourinho. There's no solidly good for a while. You're either amazing or it's an utter disaster. And that's quite interesting to me. I mean, we talk about it a lot with players about the consistency. Oh, they're amazing on their day, but they don't show it enough. That's arguably what you could say with Mourinho.
Yeah, I don't think you should judge people by their failures, though. You know, I think the main thing is that he's done it. He's won league titles and Champions Leagues, and he's done it in multiple multiple countries. And not a lot of people have done that. Managers. If we were to talk about a top 5, would we say
Guardiola?
Not in no particular order. Guardiola, Ferguson, Ancelotti. Would we put Mourinho in? I think I'd put Mourinho in.
Are we talking all time, or are we talking?
Yeah, if we're talking all time,
let's say of like the modern era of the past 25 years or something.
So, okay. Premier League era, Premier League to like 1992 onwards.
I don't mean Premier League. I mean like Europe,
2000,
like
2000 onward.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean like of all time, in worldwide. Yeah. So we'll do Guardiola, Ferguson, Mourinho, Ancelotti,
Conte.
It would be
Antonio Conte.
I think the truth is, I think there's a top three, and it's Guardiola, Fergie, and Ancelotti. Yeah, there's a top three in that time.
Yeah,
and then the rest are all kind of the same. Mourinho, Conte. You'd throw Wenger in there, right? Unbeatable season in that time period at Arsenal. You'd throw you'd probably throw Didier Deschamps in there, what he's done with France. Right.
Maybe. Well, do you know one thing I didn't consider as well? You can only really say maybe Del Bosque, what he did with that Spain team.
Mm-hmm.
Luis
Enrique. I mean, you throw him in there as well for what he did in Spain and what he's done at Villa since. But Unai Emery's in that sort of conversation, probably not quite at Mourinho level yet. But he's in that conversation. Klopp's got to be in that conversation.
Yeah,
I think he misses out on top 5 though.
This is what happens when Stu's not on the podcast. Jurgen Klopp's not been mentioned till this point.
if we're talking longevity, Klopp clears Mourinho.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what I mean? No. Hang on, Matt. Because if you think about it, yes, Mourinho's won the trophies he did at Porto and Chelsea and Inter, and he did win some trophies at Real Madrid and the rest. I get all that, but Klopp turned Dortmund from a struggling Dortmund team that were battling relegation to one of the best teams in the world, and he did the same with Liverpool.
Yeah, mini dynasties almost. Yeah.
I would put Klopp above. Arguably, if we're talking about top 5, Klopp is 4.
Klopp is 4. Yeah,
I would even and then let him scrap for the 5. You put Mourinho and Conte at the same sort of level to me. I think
I'd put Mourinho above Conte. I think
I wouldn't argue it, but there isn't a lot in it. That's
not a whole lot, but I think just for maybe longevity, the amount of trophies, just the pure amount of silverware he won, that would put him above Conte.
I think another manager, like that I think of, who done very well, and he's not been mentioned, Allegri.
I thought you were going to say Tim Sherwood.
Tim Sherwood. No, Remy Gard.
Allegri's not a bad shout. Allegri's a good shout.
Hang on a minute.
Remy Gard. Oh my God.
You tried to mug me off about Jose Mourinho. Get ready for these names, Carl. Paul Lambert.
Yeah. What about the top 5 worst managers of all time?
Here we go. Just Villa.
Let's throw Steven Gerrard in there, shall we?
Oh yeah.
Oh no, we're not going down that road again.
Yeah. I know we took it into Gerrard again, are we?
Roberto Di Matteo, anyone?
Di Matteo. I'm thinking of
what I say about Luis Suarez. That's how I felt after that comment. All right.
Oh dear.
But David's just there like what the popcorn, isn't he? Now I was like, yep, keep going.
I know we could keep going. A lot of it is a matter of opinion. A lot of people have put Mourinho in the top 3. I ain't gonna argue it. He's clearly been very successful as a manager, but I just wonder if Mourinho is one of those managers that you think you should have hung him up earlier. He keeps going, and he wants to be successful, and I appreciate that. And he's arguably ruining his legacy now.
Yeah, and he seems to be getting more and more bitter as well. I mean, he's ruffling feathers more and more with every club he goes to. You know, it almost just seems like for the sake of it, just for a laugh almost.
He's also not the best man manager, I'd say. Not the best.
No.
If you're one of his favourites, like Terry and Drogba, for example, we'll talk about him. Like the sun shines, don't get me wrong, but then there are some players that we talk about Marcus Rashford earlier. Well, he didn't quite work with Mourinho, but that's just I don't know. I'm getting off track. We've gone into Mourinho talk, but yeah, Guardiola's. I think we all agree, modern day manager, the best.